I was sick today, and so this weekend I am just going to rest all weekend, drink lots of liquids, have lots of veggies, and try and rest up and get better.
I don't even know where to begin. So I got it. I got the super cold. And well, the last 7 days have looked a lot like, well, I'll just show you this. The super cold put a massive 1-week hole gap in my perfectly laid out plans for properly starting to write some ideas for my research. For those who don't know me from Instagram, I don't know why I'm saying that like I'm some massive follower or influencer person on Instagram. I just speak to some PhD students on Instagram. I digress. For those who don't know me, I study in the Department of Digital Humanities at King's College London. I'm a first-year PhD student, and I also have a background in tech policy as a advocacy and policy strategist. So a lot of my work is informed by those two things, and that basically means that I study the internet. I am in the field of critical internet studies, and over the past year in particular, I have really decided to focus on using critical social theories like intersectionality and Black feminist theory to examine, curate, and define epistemologies. So those are theories of knowledges and theories of knowing and experiences of Black women's digital lives and Black women on the internet. I am a Black woman, as you can see, and that's really what drives my desire to study Black women, understand Black women's internet experiences. It's also really informed by the fact that in my professional line of work, I really understand that there is a dearth of research that does center Black women's experiences and overall, more broadly, minoritized or racialized and marginalized people's experiences on the web. Anyway, this past week, I was under the suggestion of my supervisor supposed to be reviewing and reassessing and basically updating my research proposal. In the UK, when you submit your application for a PhD, you basically have to present a fully drawn out and figured out research proposal with your research questions and your methodology and your literature review. I'm at least in the humanities, and that's where I am in, or social sciences. And this typically happens between 9 to 12 months before you actually start your PhD. So back in January, I submitted an application and spoke to my now supervisor, and she was all on board, and I was really lucky to be funded by a separate funding body, and they were on board. However, over the past 9 months, as I've been writing up my master's dissertation and finishing that research, I guess my initial idea that I submitted has shifted a little bit. At first, I was more interested in looking at some of the internet harms and conceptualizations of Black women's knowledge production on Twitter and doing a compare and contrast between that and the narratives pushed by the mainstream media, particularly using social media as well. But I have really shifted to wanting to focus on how Black women on the internet use, I guess, Twitter to create community and solidarity, and really importantly build friendship. And it's definitely autoethnographical because it's something that I do a lot. So yeah, my research interests and framing has really shifted, and therefore my research proposal needs to shift, because the research proposal will consist largely, or at least the research proposal will make up a large part of the upgrade, which is when you go from being a PhD student to a PhD candidate, typically at the end of your first year in the UK. So this week, I was supposed to be working on that. The week before, I had a meeting with my supervisor and gone through my desire to change, and she was on board, and she said, okay, let's get this revised research proposal then. And I was like, cool. And then I got the super cold, and then I sat on my ass for 7 days, coughing and sniffling like a little ill rabbit rat thing. So today, on Friday, I am going to review the literature that's sitting there unread, mocking me in my Zotero, and hopefully get an outline of what it is I need to read. It's really funny because my supervisor was like, okay, so we'll have this in 2 weeks. And I looked at her like, and she was like, you can have a month. Which is funny because I'm just off the back of writing 20,000 words for my master's dissertation. And when I tell you I have not a single idea, brain cell, thought left, I don't have a single thought left. So it's taking me a little longer to sort of rev up the engine and warm up and get back into it again. So luckily I have a month, but now I have less than that. I have about 3 weeks, and I have a check-in with my supervisor next week, and I really want to send her some writing so she has something to come back with. So even if it's just my introduction and my literature review portion of the research proposal that I'm revising, then ideally I want to have that finished by next Thursday. So, super cold, be gone, ideally. It was truly the ghetto, do not recommend, 0 out of 10 stars. But yeah, I might take you along with me today as I try and do a 1 day of work. Although to be completely honest, I will likely be working this weekend. But yeah, keep watching. I just tried to do that thing where people like cover their screen. I don't even know. Oh, that's where it is. Eek! Okay, bye. Super cold, still kicking my ass. Not sure, well, you probably won't know because this is on like my second video on my channel, but I'm not this congested or nasally usually, I don't think. So I'm still suffering a little bit from the super cold, but we'll move. Okay, so the whole vlogging, doing my daily PhD life thing didn't really work out for the past week or so, so I thought what I would do instead for the rest of this video would just jump on here, and I would actually want to talk a little bit about my research because this is a channel where I'm hoping to talk about my research as well as lifestyle stuff. So I thought I'd give you a little précis about what it is that I'm actually studying or researching at the moment. And I'm looking at my notebook here because I might be at the PhD level, but I still have no idea what it is that I'm actually doing. Okay? Don't tell my supervisor. So I thought I would do so by introducing my research through the 5 W's of research. W's of research are who, what, when, where, and why. And it's a way of explaining or information gathering about your research. And in academia in particular, the 5 W's are, I would say, like a framework for thinking about the impact of your research and also a tactic for communicating it. So I thought that I would start by actually doing something which is like your research pitch. So my funding body had an induction at the beginning of my PhD program a few weeks ago, and they told us to basically write down what our like impact statement was if we were with someone who's really powerful. And so I thought that I would start by sharing with you what my impact statement was. And granted, I'm only in my first year of my PhD, so this will likely change. But overall, in terms of how I look at my professional work and my academic work, I think this is largely what I hope my impact to be and what I think that I'm trying to do here. So my research aims to create equitable and joyful technological futures by using critical social theories like Black feminist thought and intersectionality. To do so, I define and examine Black women's digital media experiences so that we, as in all of us, can have a greater understanding of the social construct of technology and its impact on marginalized members of society. Now, that's kind of like a lot to take in, and there's a little bit of jargon in there in terms of critical social theories and what exactly that means and what the theories that I'm using means. So I'm going to use the 5 W's now, I guess, to try and break it down a little bit more. So the first W is who, or who is conducting and who will benefit it. So I'm conducting the research, and I think the primary benefit of the study, or what I'm hoping for, is Black women. Obviously, as I mentioned before, that I'm hoping to examine and define Black women's digital media experiences. So I really hope that the community that I'm studying are actually the primary beneficiaries of the research that I'm doing. And actually today, as part of my work where I'm doing my literature review, I've been reading some articles, and Moya Bailey, who is a doctor, she wrote an incredible book called Misogynoir, or Digital Black Misogynoir, and she looks at the experiences of Black queer women and Black trans women. And in her article, she really talks about how she wants to co-create her research with those communities, and I am really hoping to build on her approach to also ensure that my communities that I'm hoping to impact are really not only the beneficiaries, but are also helping to curate and define how I approach and tackle especially some of the methodologies and the way that I actually conduct my research. I think the second beneficiary of my research are other critical internet researchers like myself, or sociologists, anthropologists, ethnographers, or historians. And the second part of the who question is, who is this research funded by? And it's currently funded by a research council in the United Kingdom. So the second W is what has happened with this research, what was done to complete it, what processes were involved, what methods, and what was the results and conclusions. As I mentioned, I just started my PhD, so it hasn't really started yet. I haven't started my data analysis or anything, but right now I'm actually trying to situate my idea and my research questions specifically within the broader literature of other research and other empirical studies that looks at broadly the internet and society. Yeah, so the fourth question is, or the fourth W is when. When did this take place? And yeah, when did the project start and when did it finish? So it's 2021, so it will be starting now. I'm feeling these questions are kind of pointless. Hopefully, you know what day it is. We're not all still struggling. Anyway, so it's taking place this year, but I'm in a 4-year program, so between now and 2025, so it'll be taking place. And it started, in October/November. But also because my research is informed, or I guess it's really more my positionality, and what positionality means in academia is basically I'm unable to remove my identity as a Black British woman, as a Black woman, or just as a woman from my research approach. Therefore, I'm actually going to say that that is a benefit of my research. And therefore, on top of that, I'm also considering using autoethnography, which is basically the use of stories or narratives that are specific and about the researcher to inform the research itself. And oftentimes the researcher's experiences and stories will actually be used as part of the data set. because I'm using autoethnography, although this research is, officially starting in 2021, it's really informed by a lot of my work and my experiences. And I've been thinking about these sort of questions and Black women's internet experiences for a number of years. So it also kind of started years before, if that makes sense. Okay. So the final W is why. Why did this research happen and why was there a need for it? Which are really, really big questions and really important questions. And for me, I feel like I have several whys. The why is the biggest and I feel like the most juiciest for me. And I think I can kind of split it into a few sections. So the first would be a very personal why. My mom, who's not here anymore, she passed away from cancer about 5 years ago. She was 6 months out from finishing her PhD when she died, and I was younger then and I didn't really understand her reasons for being a PhD. She became a mom quite young, and I have 4 siblings, so for a lot of her life she was really a mother. And she's very bright. She was a family lawyer. She opened her own stores, and eventually, once all of us kids were old enough and we were doing fine, she decided to go back and do her PhD. And I didn't understand then, but I do understand now the sort of personal motivation and drive you have to do to, I think, begin or want to do a PhD. And her PhD was also quite autoethnographical. She did a PhD at Warwick University in sociology, and she was looking at immigration and stories of immigrants, particularly in Canada and the UK, as a sort of compare and contrast of the point system of immigration systems of those two countries. As I mentioned, I also grew up in Canada. I digress, but I guess the point I'm trying to say is a personal why is my research is really inspired by my mom, and I want to become a doctor and an academic, and I want to do research because I'm interested in it, but also because she was unable to finish and fulfill her dream. The second why, I guess, is theoretical. As I mentioned before, I use critical social theories, and one of those that I'm going to be using is Black feminist theory. And Black feminists such as Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, Patricia Hill Collins, and so many more, Angela Davis, myself, I'm a Black feminist, but I'm not on the same level as those incredible women. Black feminist theory, a core, I guess, criterion of this theoretical approach really argues that Black women's experiences and particularly their everyday experiences are instances of knowledge, and they help shape our consciousness of what it means to be a minoritized or marginalized member of society. And Patricia Hill Collins' epistemological conceptualization of Black feminist theory argues that when you are doing Black feminist research, you need to ensure that the stories and perspectives of Black women are at the center of your research. And as a Black woman, studying Black women, that is a big part of my why. It's also theoretical. The theory sort of requires it, but it's also, again, about the communities that the research is about and who I hope that it will benefit. I guess the third part of the why is that, as I mentioned, or I think I've mentioned before, I probably haven't actually, but I actually work as a tech policy and advocacy strategy / consultant, and I have been doing this for a number of years now. And I call it my professional stream of work, not because I don't think academic work is professional, but it's just obviously not in academia. And basically, as in tech policy, we try to regulate the internet as a big part of it. We try to understand the implications of the internet in society. So a big example that I think most people have heard about is the Cambridge Analytica scandal. That was a big tech policy issue, and we're thinking about things like misinformation and disinformation, and algorithmic injustice and algorithmic harms and content moderation, and all of those very nuanced, complex, stressful things. However, working in these spaces and working in tech policy, specifically, I realized that there was a lack of research that looked at certain demographics online. Many scholars, in particular Lisa Nakamura, Peter Chow White, Sophia Umoja Noble, Ruha Benjamin, have talked about the notion of there being sort of a whiteness of the internet as a default user. And that's not to denigrate white people or to say that, whiteness is bad, but we can get into that in another video. But basically, in critical internet research, a lot of studies argue that there is a default internet user, and that default internet user is really always constructed to be a white middle-class person, even though there's a lot of examples and research that outlines and shows that other demographics, so African Americans or Black people, also use technologies in high numbers. And therefore, as scholars, it's really important to be specific and nuanced when we're talking about the types of demographics that use not only the internet and digital media and Web 2.0 and Web 3.0, but also their experiences and how their cultural and social backgrounds may inform or influence those experiences. And I noticed when I was working in tech policy that we were often thinking about the harms of the internet. So if you think about Facebook and misinformation, and we were thinking about how those harms were impacting marginalized communities, but we weren't also talking about how those marginalized communities, so Black women in my case, make use of these technologies and how they use it for things like digital Black joy and community and solidarity. And I think it's really important to not only look at the harms of social media and technology, but also, the broad positives and how people's cultural backgrounds mean that they are able to influence and shape and change. There's a question of technological determinism, and whether or not technology shapes humans or humans shape technology. And I really believe that it's definitely a push and pull. And all of that's to say that basically when I was working and as I work in tech policy, there's really a gap in the policies, and there's a research policy spectrum. So policymakers and lawmakers and those people that have the power to regulate technology companies don't have the understanding of how different communities are impacted by technology, because the research, as I mentioned before, is largely around this whiteness and this default user. And therefore there's a gap in the research and in the policy. And that's why I'm really motivated to develop and create this research, because I want to help fill that gap. I feel like I've been talking for 50 years. So yeah, those are largely my 5 W's of my research. I think the final thing I'll just add is that, I study Black women on the internet because I am a Black woman on the internet. And I don't mean that in the sense that I'm a, super famous influencer creator, but it's really part of my life. I've met partners through digital technologies. I've met really good friends through, apps. I have gotten jobs using the internet. I have made Twitter friends. I laugh. And I've also seen the harms of the internet. And I think it's really important to understand how social media and how the internet and how the internet is actually going to shape our lives, or how the internet does shape our lives. And when I say our, I really mean Black women's in that sense. And I think it's really important that communities that are ignored or on the margins have investment to understand their stories and their knowledges. And I think with that, I'll leave it there. Please forgive me if this video is really chopped up and awkward. I'm still really finding my feet when it comes to vlogging, and I'm not that comfortable yet, but I'm enjoying getting out of my comfort zone and trying something different. Okay, have a really great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.